Shalom, family. Good to see you all here. Hope you're doing well. I do want to make one announcement. Um, I did reach my goal on my Send Give Go. It is still up. So if people still want to donate, it's there. But I just want to take the time to say thank you so much. I am so at ease now that I can go and get my procedure done. And hopefully, I can get back to doing my regular life things and just keep it moving. So, I'm not really that far away from February 18th. So, I thank you. It's going to be up until the end of the month, and then I'll probably more than likely will take it down. But thank you for your contributions. Thank you for all of your prayers, your emails, and the Zells, the Cash Apps, the PayPal, GoFundMe. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I pray for nothing but blessings for you from the Most High. So, y'all, we're going to get into Donald Trump and his effort in trying to erase us from everywhere. And these people, they have been on one for quite some time. Um, we had before they got on this DEI kick, they were on the CRT kick, critical race theory, and running around complaining about that and banning books written by Black authors. It was just going to their school boards and whining and complaining about they don't want their kids in the class during Black History. They don't want them learning that. I never thought that was right. If you got the option of not learning Black history, why do we not have the option to walk away when your history is being taught? I don't think that's fair. And I think that's very one sided. And what makes you think we want to know your history? Your history ain't nothing but lies anyway. It's not like you're telling the truth, it's just a bunch of lies. You're wasting everybody's time. And besides, you start removing history, you might as well close the museum. Nobody is going to go to a museum and look at all white history. It is just you might as well just close it down. Nobody's going to go look at that. So Donald Trump is doing it for two reasons. Yes, he wants to erase our history and elevate his own people. And number two, they don't like the stigma of slavery on them. So they will do anything to get that off. So they figure if we erase this and then the next generation come along, we don't have to teach them nothing. That is not going to work. That is not going to work. They're not going to be able to go through their entire lifetime and not know about the racism, not know about, a lot of certain historical events that occurred and all of the blood that was spilled on this land. There was a lot of blood spilled on this land. And there is no way they're going to make it through their life and not encounter somebody that's going to say something. But good luck. Removing items and artifacts is not going to erase what is really, that really took place in history on this land. So you can go ahead and take it. We can go ahead and take it. But if you think I'm going to get up and cheer when history is spoke about you, you got another thought coming. In fact, I would advise everybody to walk away. So if you can't hear about somebody else's history, real history, mind you, that really took place, why should I be subjected to yours? I think everybody should walk away from yours. And not to mention, You done got so bold and blatant. Y'all are doing this mess out in the open, removing stuff and banning stuff. You're doing this all out in the open. And Donald Trump was getting ready to rape the Black Smithsonian until he was stopped. This is ridiculous. Slavery happened. Jim Crow happened. Reconstruction happened. Civil rights happened. Mass incarceration happened. All this oppression up in here happened. What the hell do you mean you're trying to hide it? Oh, because white kids are going, no, this is not y'all, this ain't about no white kids. This is about the white adults that have spent their life having a problem with listening to our history. And so they're trying to now lay this excuse onto the feet of their children. And it's not really their children at all. It's the adults. It's the white adults like Donald Trump. That's who it's been. That's who it's always been. It's always been them. But the fact that the whole world is watching you take all this stuff down and you think people are not going to speak on the history that you removed? Boy, y'all are really truly more delusional than I ever anticipated. So y'all, we're gonna hear, and and another reason they're trying to get us in the streets. They figure if they keep removing anything attached to our forefathers, we're gonna get so mad and we're gonna jump up and run to the streets. Nobody is gonna run to any streets for no object that you removed. It's not gonna happen. Nobody's gonna go out here because y'all want us out here badly, including Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been doing all kinds of, backhanded things to get us upset. And we sure have not gotten upset enough to go out in these streets. And you know what? You won't. You know why? You have done every rotten, dirty, low down thing you could possibly do to us. We're no longer shocked by your actions. We're not. We're not even surprised by your actions anymore. We have seen it for far too long, for century after century. It's no shock value in what you do. You don't like us, you never liked us, you never will like us, and it shows in your actions. And I would say a year, 2, 3, 4 down the line, it will be the same way. One thing you are is consistent. So, y'all, let me go ahead and share my screen. Please give me a 1 if you can see my screen. Thank you.
Donald Trump is actively trying to purge museums of Black history and whitewash America's history by calling our museums too woke.
Well, we want the museums to treat our country fairly. We want the museums to talk about the history of our country in a fair manner, not in a woke manner or in a racist manner, which is what many of them, not all of them, but many of them are doing. Our museums have an obligation to represent what happened in our country over the years, good and bad, but what happened over the years in an
The museums, when it comes down to slavery, it does tell the truth. The bottom line is Donald Trump sound like an idiot. Okay, he sounds like an idiot. The entire history of America is racist. And that's not due to us. That is due to the people that look like Donald Trump. Y'all set the tone for America. Y'all created the laws. You created the policies. You created all this oppressive environment that's here. All right. So, what the hell are you complaining about it now? It was fine for a long time. But see, what it is, you want to do it, you just don't want to hear about it. And that's unrealistic. That's why it's never going to happen where you can do and carry out all these racist acts and never hear about it. That's unrealistic. You are never going to see that in your lifetime. You're going to always be listening to it, whether you like it or not. If you want racism to go away and you don't want to hear about it no more, Donald Trump, you can pick up your pen and give us our reparations. Then you and your people will never have to hear another word from us again. So snatching out artifacts and trying to whitewash everything, that's not the answer. The answer is giving us our reparations. Anything less than that, then you ain't done a damn thing but sit around running your mouth. So let's go on.
Accurate way.
Black American history is barely taught in America as it stands now. There's no universal curriculum in this country to explain the history of what it means to be Black in America and our Black experience. We learn our history from our parents, our grandparents, our elders, and our community, and that's how we've always learned our history. An abridged version of what most people in this country learn is that slavery was bad. Slaves were brought from Africa. They worked on plantations, mainly cotton and tobacco. Lincoln ended slavery, then cut to Martin Luther King and civil rights, and then we've been free. But that is not how history works, right? Our history is omitted from curriculum and omitted from the mainstream society because that would have to mean that America would admit its portion in systematically oppressing us today. Slavery lasted for 246 years, from 1619 until 1865. And then for 89 years after 1865, we lived under one of the worst apartheid systems in the modern world, where Jim Crow run rampant. In 1954, we got the civil rights era starting, and when we had our leaders fight for our rights to vote, fight for our rights to have fair and free housing, but we were still, the systems in place were already unilaterally spread throughout this country, meaning Black people couldn't do many things. And we had to fight for the next 30 to 40, 50 years, even today, to get access to certain things. But because this isn't taught, and the history and the gruesomeness of that slavery, where we have men raping women at their beck and call, and then stealing those babies from those mothers and then raping them again and getting them pregnant. Black people were sent to breeding farms, mainly in Virginia, to breed with each other because the strongest slave would breed another strong slave, whether they were family.
I'm glad he brought this up. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. That's the part of history they have hidden for a long, long time. The slave breeding farms. That was some of the most brutal, brutal things that occurred. That existence was brutal. As soon as a young teen would get her cycle, she was rushed off to a breeding farm. And once on that breeding farm, not only did she get raped by the men that were there to impregnate her, the white men were there and they were doing the same thing. So these young, very young, immature, not even mature yet, girls were not only getting raped by the men that look like them, they were getting raped by the white men too. It was horrible. Do you know how awful that was? To be somebody 12 years old, get sent to a breeding farm, and on a regular basis, you're getting raped. That is what happened. It was horrific. It was horrific. And those breeding farms, y'all, are still there. They're just overgrown in wooded areas where you can't see them. But they have completely hidden that part of the history. And they will only show you out of all the things that occurred in slavery, a lot of stuff happened. The only thing they will show you today is a plantation. They won't show you nothing else. Our people did so much beyond that plantation, it's not even funny. But they have reduced us down to just picking cotton and vegetables on a plantation, and we did so much more than that, y'all. We did so much more. But that breeding farm was horrifying of what our people went through. It was horrible. I had a relative, and when I did my family tree, I found a relative that fathered. He was a man, and they looked at him as like one of those prize slaves. He was real strong and buff. So they took him and bred him. I found one family member that was a breeder. He had over 300 children, y'all. It was documented. He had over 300 children. So there was a breeder in my family that I came across when I did my family tree. So it's no telling how many blood relatives I have, and I don't know who they are. They could cross my path right now. I don't know who they are, but I know I got a lot of family that I do not know who they are that came from this one relative that was a breeder. So, no, y'all ain't gonna get in my face and tell me we didn't do nothing but plantation because I got documentation of the breeder that was in my family. So, y'all, let's go on.
Or not. That's where the term motherfucker comes from. The more you know. Lynching people, how people bringing their babies to come watch lynchings, antagonizing Black people, terrorizing Black people, eating Black people. There's so many things that happen in America.
Oop. Because somebody was asking, how do I know they were a breeder? Because when you go in the census, okay, when you go in the census, it told you what the slave was. So if the slave was a field hand, they would be listed as a whole hand. So that was an adult or a teenager that was out in the field. If it was a half hand was a child that was in the fields working. So some slaves were in the house. That was listed. All right. If that was a house slave, that house slave was listed. That was a slave in the house with the family. And if the slave was used for breeding, they had no shame. It was documented. That's how I know. That's how I know that family member was a breeder because he was listed as a breeder. Just like a damn animal. That's how you know. So whatever your slave trade was, in many cases, it was listed. These folks weren't ashamed of what they did to us. They were not ashamed. All right, let's get back to this. Let me add this back.
Aren't evil. It's always white people bad, black people good. And that's not the case. The case is if we don't teach our history the correct way, why would anyone listen to my experience as a black person? And it's already being challenged. It's every time I put up a video about the black experience or black history, people can throw out racist comments very quickly to me. And I'm like, why do you think it's so easy for you to be racist when my experience is exhausting? It is exhausting being black and have to stand 10 toes down for my history and my culture. Because if it's not us to teach it, they'll wipe it from the history books here. And that's what they're trying to do.
My people, hear me now. So Donald Trump just signed an executive order to silence our truth, to wipe out our history, and to put a fake smile on a nation that's been bleeding us dry since its birth. He calls it restoring truth in American history. But let's be real. This ain't about truth. It's about control. He wants to stop the Smithsonian from teaching our children about slavery, racism, genocide, and injustice. The very things that built this country brick by bloody brick. He's attacking the National Museum of African American History and Culture and any program that talks about the systems that tried to keep us down. Why? Because our truth makes him uncomfortable. Because our history exposes their lies. Trump says our museums have fallen under divisive, race-centered ideology. No, sir. Our museums have finally started telling the whole story. Not just the whitewashed version, not just the fairy tale, but the truth. That racism shaped American laws, its economy, and its identity. He says exhibits that teach about power, privilege, and disenfranchisement are anti-American. But what's more anti-American than hiding the truth? Let's not forget, they told us that slavery was a necessary evil. They told us that we were 3/5 of a man. They erased black towns from maps. They built statues to the very people who fought to keep us in chains. And now they want to make it illegal for the Smithsonian, our institution, to even say race exists as a social construct. They don't want us to learn the truth because truth brings power, and power in the hands of people terrifies them. Trump's order even targets hard work and individualism, claiming that we label those things as white culture. That's a lie. What we've said is that those values were used to judge and punish black folks, while white systems handed out privilege without effort. That's the kind of twisted narrative they spread to silence us. This ain't new. Every time we gain ground, they move to the finish line. Every time we lift our voices, they try to shut us up. But we are not going back, as Kamala says. We are the truth they fear. We are the mirror they avoid. We are the proof that this country has never been perfect, but that our fight for justice is what makes it worth saving. So what do? We stand up. We speak out. We protect our stories. We teach our kids what the museum can. We support our Black historians, our artists, our storytellers. We call out every lie, every law, every order meant to erase us. Because if they take our history, they take our power. And if we lose that, we lose everything. But as long as we breathe, our truth lives on. They want to rewrite the story, but baby, we are the story. Let the world know. We won't let them erase our pain, our progress, or our people. Not today, not ever. So rise up, speak truth, stay woke. We got work to do.
As if we needed more confirmation that Donald Trump is nothing more than a racist, misogynist pig. His latest Truth Social drop really hits home. It is the 5th day of Black History Month in 2026, and our president takes it upon himself to post questionably one of the more openly disgusting racist things I have ever seen in my fucking life. Now, I'm not going to give it the credit of even posting it on here, but I will say it is a picture of former President Barack Obama and his wife dressed as monkeys. No, I'm sure that's great for the racist Republicans out there, but really it just hits home that this man is not fit for this position of power. The most powerful, questionably the most powerful man on the planet. And he uses his time to just post openly, disgustingly racist things. Stay classy, MAGA.
But there's something even more sinister at work here. The executive order doesn't just target the enslavement exhibits. It aims to fundamentally change how American history is presented. It demands that all public monuments and museums do not contain descriptions, depictions, or other content that inappropriately disparage Americans' past or living. In other words, if the truth makes people uncomfortable, the truth has to go. The museum's founding director, Lonnie Bunch, spent years collecting over 40,000 artifacts to tell their story. He created a space that celebrates not just the struggles, but also the joys, the culture, and the triumphs of the African American experience. Now, with a single signature, Trump is threatening to sanitize this history to make it more comfortable for those who'd rather not face the truth. But the war on Black history isn't just happening in museums. In January 2025, President Trump's administration sent an official message to all federal departments and offices. The message, addressed to department leads and key personnel, seemed bureaucratic on the surface, but its contents were chilling. Create a plan for eliminating DEI employees from the federal workforce. The departments were given until January 31st to complete this task. But Trump's administration couldn't even wait that long. A second message soon followed, and it was more urgent than the first. This one didn't just ask for plans. It ordered department leaders to begin firing DEI employees immediately. According to Trump, this move was meant to stop what he called racism within the government. He labeled these DEI programs, initiated by President Joe Biden, as both illegal and immoral. When he signed the executive orders to dismantle them, he referred to DEI as an identity-based spoil system, claiming it robbed hard-working Americans of job opportunities. And by hard-working Americans, he meant white Americans. And this attack on diversity didn't stop at government doors. The executive order encouraged federal agencies to explore ways to influence the private sector to eliminate their own DEI initiatives. The goal was to dismantle diversity programs across the entire country, and we're already seeing the impact. Major companies like McDonald's, Meta, Target, and Walmart have responded to this pressure. Walmart, for example, shut down a racial equity center it had created in 2020.
Facebook Meme News Central is saying that Donald John Quavius Trump wants to remove Black history and African American history from the Smithsonian. Well, I decided to read the official documents, and I want to let you know exactly what he wants scrapped from the Smithsonian in order for it to keep receiving federal funds. Number one, in African American history and culture, they describe the nuclear family, work ethic, and intellect as white qualities that are rooted in racism. Donald John Quavius said, absolutely not. You can be Black, white, Asian, or Latina. Those are American qualities. The National Portrait Gallery, they choreographed a modern dance performance detailing the ramifications of the southern border wall. They also have art portraying illegal border crossings. We all knew that President Trump was against the illegal border crossing, so I don't understand what the problem is with that. Okay, next, the American History Museum. He said, take the pride flag down because your sexuality has nothing to do with American history. And he said, scrap the LGBTQ history because it's about American history. It has no bearing on what your sexuality is because that has no bearing on who you are as a human being and as an American. The National Museum of African Art, they have an underwater kingdom of pregnant women thrown overboard during the Middle Passage. Well, we want the history to be accurate and factual, so that part has to go. The National Museum of the American Latina. It features content from a disabled plus-size actress and an ambulatory wheelchair user who educate on identity, being Latino, Latina, LGBTQ, and disabled. I can't give you an answer as to why that was even there. They also rewrote the Texas Revolution as a fight about slavery instead of Texan independence from Mexico. So the whole point is, if we're going to tell history, if it's going to be a museum, especially one that is federally funded, it's going to have to be accurate and it's going to have to tell the truth. It also said that Black Lives Matter is what actually unites Latinos and Latinas. We all know that is grossly untrue. So he's saying scrap that. The National Portrait Gallery, they have a stop motion drawing of Dr. Fauci. He's not an American hero. Scrap it. American History Museum, they argue in favor of and feature transgender athletes competing in sports against the opposite biological sex. We all knew his stance on that before he even won the presidency. While he was campaigning, before he got elected, he already told you what he thought about that, so that should not be a surprise. It also has an exhibit of the Statue of Liberty holding a tomato instead of a torch, and a basket of tomatoes in her other hand. So again, some stuff he just wanted to scrap because he does not think it's American history. And to be quite honest, I don't think it's American history either. Side note, there is another part where it lists the Pilgrims as a myth, saying that they're colonizers, and they're saying that's not true. In actuality, they are colonizers, but the root of their colonization was for religious freedom, as opposed to the colonizers that came later, whose colonization was rooted in greed and monetary gain. So that's it in a nutshell. No, he's not trying to rewrite history. He just wants it to be more accurate. So I'll catch you guys on the next one. God bless you. God bless America. And God bless Donald John Quavius Trump. Love y'all. Talk to y'all later. Bye.
So we've seen Donald Trump try to erase Black history in the Smithsonian and in national parks. And now he's trying to ignore Black History Month. We haven't seen him say a word about it on social media. There have been no proclamations issued by the White House, and the Trump Kennedy Center doesn't have any Black History Month events on its calendar. This is no coincidence, but we're not going to let him erase our rich history and culture. And please know that I am always going to uplift Black voices and history.
So I'm sitting here in the wee hours of the morning, drinking my coffee, barely awake, and wondering what news happened overnight. And then I stumble across this Truth Social post from our president. This tired old racist trope would be disgusting from anybody, any decent human being. But it is particularly disgusting that the leader of the free world, the President of the United States, thought he needed to post this, especially on the heels of his mockery of the National Prayer Breakfast and during Black History Month. So I want to call on Republican elected officials today across the country and in this community to denounce this post. You don't have to say you disagree with the president's policies. You don't have to say that you dislike the president. You don't have to denounce the Republican Party. Simply denounce this post. Say the president was wrong, that it's racist, and that you ought to apologize to the Obamas. Is that so hard to do?
We have seen the very words used to describe Black Americans' experience with slavery and discrimination erased from federal recognition. We have seen websites purged of Black people's contribution to this country.
President Donald Trump chose to commemorate Juneteenth with a social media post complaining about the number of non-working holidays in the year.
President Trump promised to usher in a society that was
colorblind and merit-based.
Since taking office, President Trump ordered the Department of Interior to restore Confederate monuments that have been removed across the country over the past 5 years. We now have schools across the country facing the threat of losing federal funding if they support curricula such as Black and ethnic studies. Nowhere has the impact of these orders been more felt than at the Department of Defense.
I think the single dumbest phrase in military history is our diversity is our strength.
Black people have fought and died in every single war since this country's founding. It is a source of pride. And the fact that it is there that we are seeing the most aggressive efforts to remove that deeply seated piece of pride among this population has been devastating. They had to restore websites back after public outcry. When I speak to administration officials about this topic, they see these orders as a course correction from the last administration, who they believe largely engaged in very performative policy making, which this administration believes amounted to what they call reverse discrimination against white people. For historians who study Black history in particular, this all harkens back to some of the most painful times in Black history, a dehumanization of Black people in the face of progress.
And our country will be woke no longer.
What these orders have done is signal to this country whose history matters.
I rise tonight during Black History Month to raise the alarm on the rewriting of American history that is happening at our national parks, our museums, our monuments, and our public spaces, as the Trump administration is attempting to erase the histories, the stories, and the lives of our Black, Native, Chicano, AAPI, and LGBTQ+ communities. We rise tonight to talk about what this means for the past, the present, and the future of this country, because as they say, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it, and this country has come far too far to forget. Mr. Speaker, how we as a nation remember matters. What we remember matters. Who we remember matters. Because this collective memory is the map on which we build our future. And our nation's national parks, our monuments, our memorials, our museums, and our public spaces are the places in which those memories are inscribed. Now, I want to begin tonight with a simple premise, that the act of remembering is a deeply political and a deeply powerful act. And so too is the act of erasure, of erasing and removing history. Because these are not merely acts of omission, but acts of power, acts of dominance, and yes, even acts of violence. Erasing is about telling people that their histories and their people do not matter, that your history, that your ancestors, and your collective memories of pride, joy, struggle, resilience, and generations that came before do not matter. And this is exactly what this administration is doing, trying to take us back to a time where only the stories and lives of the few mattered. It began a year ago, on day one, when the president signed an executive order renaming Denali, the tallest mountain in Alaska and most sacred site to multiple indigenous communities, renamed after a president from Ohio without any consultation to the indigenous people of Alaska. That same day, the president signed an executive order mandating the elimination of diversity, equity, and inclusion offices across the federal government, leading to the illegal firing and loss of leadership across federal and military service. In March, he signed another executive order called the Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History Order, directing the Smithsonian and the Secretary of Interior to remove what they called improper partisan ideology from exhibits and materials across the country. It targeted mentions of slavery, Native American history, Chicano history, AAPI history, LGBTQ+ history, climate change, and other topics which they claimed were divisive, anti-American, and created quote unquote national shame, thereby erasing the histories of tens of millions of Americans. Secretarial orders, including those at the Department of Interior, that has led to the censorship of government websites and the tearing down of signs at multiple monuments. references to the histories of famous leaders removed from websites, national holidays erased, rewriting history and removing us from the American story. And what is this all in service of? Promoting some singular narrative to undermine the recognition of this nation's true history and its long history of struggles that have shaped us, of overcoming the loss of land, of killing and displacement of indigenous people, of slavery, of Jim Crow, internment, and the continued struggle for justice across our communities. This is our true history as a nation, not something we should be ashamed of, but what has shaped who we are. These actions erase the story of what makes this great nation beautiful. It's multicultural, multiracial, indigenous, Black, brown, white, and diversity that makes us who we are. This erasure delegitimizes the movements and wins that we've secured generation after generation. From the struggle for civil rights at Selma and the Edmund Pettus Bridge, slavery at Gettysburg, westward expansion into tribal lands that secured tribal sovereignty, references to transgender erased from the signs at Stonewall, where the birth of the modern LGBTQ plus movement began, references to indigenous history removed from the places from which people came from the battle place at Little Bighorn in Montana. Memories of Black and Native history erased from Independence Park, Cape Hatteras, and the National Mall. Remembrance of internment of Japanese Americans removed from Jamaica Bay and New York City. References to climate change removed at Fort Sumter in South Carolina and Acadia National Park in Maine. Public institutions and gift shops banned from carrying books in America. Banned. And the Department of Education seeking to defund schools, universities, and institutions for teaching the history of the people and students and children who are there. So, Mr. Speaker, these are not isolated incidents. This is a wholesale attack on American history, on American democracy, on American progress, and the stories of our people. And it is at its core about power. Because as George Orwell noted, who controls the past controls the future, and who controls the present controls the past. So this is not, as this administration claims, about patriotism or telling the American story. It's about controlling knowledge and history itself. Whose histories, whose stories, and whose people are lifted up, especially as this country is celebrating its 250th birthday. So we are here tonight to say, not on our watch. We will not let this country slide into an Orwellian and or authoritarian state where we cannot even tell our own histories, because we are here to tell the truth, just as history does.
All right, y'all. You know, let's just be real. As long as Gentiles are running this place, it's these kind of things are always going to happen. It is. You know, they're not interested in preserving history. They're interested in preserving history that makes white supremacists look good. That's the only history they are concerned about. All other history of anything that took place in this country, they want it gone. And number two, that's very unrealistic. Centuries later, you're going to wait all these centuries later. Now it's time to get rid of stuff that's kind of asinine. I'm just saying. So, y'all, whatever objects Donald Trump wants to take, we need not concern ourselves with it. It's not anything that we don't worship objects. or idols or anything like that. So he wants to take artifacts down, let him do it. You know, it's still not going to drive us to the streets, Donald Trump. You know, it's just not going to work. You're not going to get what you want. So, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. And I want to thank Zachariah Williams, 16M, for your super sticker and contribution to my channel. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you. And y'all, have a wonderful afternoon. My next live is going to be on the warning that has come out from the Pentagon. We're going to get into that, where they are issuing a warning to the public that America could take a direct physical hit in this next war. You know, there's been a lot of rumbling about Iran over these last several weeks. And they're saying that, you know, for the first time, America could be getting bombed. So y'all, we'll get into that at 3:45. I hope to see each and every one of you back then. Shalom, family.